addition to that, you can't really create a relevant quality plan unless we have a full picture of what's really going on with that family. And the only way we really have that full picture is to do a quality assessment. And I think too often, because of time frames and the caseload activities, we put together a plan, but we really haven't put a lot of thought into how does this plan really need to apply to this particular person's situation or this particular family's needs and strengths. So, I mean, the two really have to be connected if you want really high quality planning. You've got to have a high quality assessment to truly understand what's going on.
And if I could just add to that, what the courts look at when they're looking at permanency plans and whether or not the permanency plan has been complied with by the parent and whether or not the department did their part in providing reasonable efforts to the parent. The key element to that is the court looks at whether or not the responsibilities under the plan are related to the reason the child is in custody or the reason the child cannot be returned to their home at that time. The assessment process helps you identify, or actually does identify, exactly why the child came into custody and any ongoing needs that the child and family may have. So when you do that assessment and when you keep that assessment updated and keep it as a living document, then you are constantly assessing what the real reasons are, and those are translated into the plan, and your actions, steps, and responsibilities are directly related to why the child's in custody.
And to give an example of what Ricky's talking about, it's not unusual. We usually know why a child comes into custody. Perhaps a child came into custody for truancy issues, and that's pretty straightforward. We have it on a court order. That's why the child came into custody. But through our assessment process, we found out there's some underlying needs that are causing those truancy issues. So for example, maybe there's some drug and alcohol usage going on in the home, or there's some domestic violence that's going on in the home affecting the child and their ability to get to school. So by discovering that within our assessment process, then when we plan, we have to plan for more than just the truancy issue. That's not going to get to the underlying need. We also have to include in our plan some action steps on how we're going to address that alcohol and drug issue or that domestic violence issue, because if we want real change, we've got to address all the issues together to affect real change within a family.
And to kind of further explain exactly what Lisa was saying, it's an exceptional point to make. The easiest way that I've learned, and I think the easiest way to teach folks how to really get to that underlying need or to that next level within your assessment, it's very simple. It's the theory of the 5 whys. And when I say that, I don't mean the who, what, when, where, why, because those are 5 W's. It's as simple as asking why 5 times. If you want to understand something, ask why. And I think traditionally we have asked why once, and we'll get the very surface bit of information. But to really understand what's going on with a family, to understand the underlying need, to understand how an interest in sports or an interest in music can really be used as a functional strength, you have to dig deeper. And asking those 5 whys is an exceptionally simple way of getting to it. Whatever answer you may get, acknowledge, great that the family has talked to you, and then ask why that's important to them. Or, why do they see this as a strength within themselves? And granted, sometimes you may have to ask why 6 times, and sometimes you may have to ask why 3 times, but the rule of 5 whys is a very simple and easy way to really get at more information and good assessment information.
Thank you so much. Right now we're going to go ahead and take some call-in questions, and we'll take any email questions that the regions may have. And while we're waiting for our call-in questions, we've got some questions from the audience members. So we'll go ahead and let them ask their questions while we're waiting for our call-in questions. So questions?
Yes. What makes a good action step on a permanency plan?
Great question, because I think traditionally, sometimes our action steps have been a little vague. I think the most common action step I see is the parent's going to get an assessment and follow recommendations. And what I'm encouraging folks to really think about is, let's give some more direction to our families about what exactly we expect them to do. Because we kind of make an assumption that as a professional, I know what I need to do to go get that assessment and follow the recommendations. And I'm pretty certain I understand the time frame I need to do it in. But unfortunately, our families don't always understand that. There is a process in navigating our healthcare system to get an assessment, and a good assessment. So be more concrete in your action steps, make sure they're measurable, and make sure we are very clear on who is responsible for each action step. We no longer have a dad page in the plan, a mom page in the plan. So I may want mom to call and schedule an appointment. I may expect dad to help with transportation, and I may expect the youth to work with the provider to get their assessment. Again, being very concrete about the expectations so we don't later have a disagreement on whether I did exactly what you said or not. Very often our parents will say, well, I've done my permanency plan. But you're thinking in your mind as a caseworker, but no, that's not exactly what I meant. So be very concrete. You know, if I don't want someone to use drugs and alcohol, then I need to say that. I don't want them just to finish an A&D program. That doesn't necessarily get me what I want. What I want is for you not to use drugs and alcohol. I want you to not hang around with peers who are actively using drugs and alcohol. So be very concrete. And I also encourage folks to consider associating dates with individual action steps. And you have to be thoughtful and you have to be realistic when you do that. I can't expect a parent to run out and get their assessments and get housing and get a job and do everything within a month. That may not be feasible, but I can encourage them that you do need to set up that appointment for your assessment within the next 10 days. You need to have gone in and done the assessment within the next 60 days because it's going to take you several months maybe to follow any recommendations. So if you don't give me that, our natural inclination is to procrastinate. So if I have a 6-month plan, I'm probably going to start at month 5.5 unless you tell me something different. So really be specific about that. I also encourage folks to describe the behaviors that prompted you to make a referral. What are the behaviors that we saw in our assessment process that made you think a mental health assessment was needed? Now, want to reassure, we are not diagnosing. We do not need to put diagnoses in there. We are not clinicians. But at the same time, there is something that happened in your assessment process, some behaviors you saw that cued you to think perhaps a referral should be made. And we need to describe those within our action steps. I want you to go to counseling for an assessment because you told me you used to take medication and because you said you feel bad a lot and you feel like you don't have energy. Then that way it's a clear understanding of what I'm actually going for and what I'm really supposed to talk about when I'm there. When we get those recommendations back from our assessors, we need to put them in the plan when we revise them. It's not good enough to say follow the recommendations because very often our parents will come back and say, I didn't know what the recommendations were, or I didn't know what they meant. So we need to have a conversation about what those recommendations were in a child and family team meeting and then incorporate them into our plan when we revise that plan. That's how you make a plan really relevant to a parent.